All right, let's get started here. The subject for today is how to prepare for an audit. What is an audit? Audits are usually, they come in multiple forms. The first form of an audit is that they just send you an SSP or a poem or a document that has a bunch of questions in it. So the questions are going to be typically a sampling of your control set. So this will come from your vendor. It'll come from your contract holder. It could come from if you're a sub from your prime. They're called primes. People who are that are over you, like your small business or a woman-owned business, and you are a sub of a prime. The prime will send you an audit document. So those audit documents will usually be potentially a sampling of your control set to see if you're following their minimum requirements. In other audits, they'll send you the entirety of your control set, and they'll ask you, like when we did the first show, this first show, we did an SSP where we went through it's got every single control for what we were looking at, which was 800 NIST 800 171, which has 110 controls. So basically, it asks for a network map. It asks for like officers and parties that were responsible for each thing, and then it went through every single control one at a time, and it asked for how you were meeting these controls. Now, the second method of audit is when a person comes by from like an accounting firm or a CMMC professional or some different kind of auditor from a IT company like that's trying to get you to be compliant. They'll do an audit. What they'll do for that audit is they'll go through every single one of your controls. So they'll look at all of your controls one by one, and they're going to want to see how it is that you meet those controls. So each of your controls, you're going to have to describe them and in detail, and you're going to have evidence and artifacts about how you meet the control. So it's not that you just meet the control, it's that you can prove that you meet the control by having what's called an artifact or evidence. And we'll go over what those are here as well. So cybersecurity is the concept of, all meeting, in this context, it's the concept of meeting these controls that have been put out by these frameworks. There's PCI, there's HIPAA, there's NIST 800 171 and 53 and all those other ones. There's CMMC 2.0. Those are cybersecurity from the context of this particular class or caller. So that's what we're referring to here. Each of these practices have a set of requirements and controls that you need to meet, and the meaning of those controls is how we are referring to cybersecurity in this vein. So we're talking about multi-factor authentication, encryption, policies and procedures, that kind of thing. There are other esoteric thoughts about cybersecurity, and that is like, what's going on in the world? Is there breaches? Those do touch a little bit on us, but not primarily. What we're primarily, concentrating on is the meaning of the controls and the production of evidence and artifacts that will allow us to prove to the auditors that how we meet these controls. So preparing for an audit, how do you get ready for it? If you know it's coming down the pipe, it'll usually give you a month or two to be available and to have the information available. And how are you going to present that data to the auditor? You have to have some kind of mechanism. The most rudimentary and basic of mechanisms is going to be like a spreadsheet or a SharePoint site. Those are extremely hard to maintain. So you're going to want to have a compliance platform. And that's the core of what Lionfish does. They provide this kind of a compliance platform to its end users, and that compliance platform is critical. I mean, we had a call the other day where we were talking about the lack of a compliance platform, and it was just a massive amount of time. Hundreds of hours were being spent, maintaining somebody's non organized web presentable client platform or compliance platform. So not having a product like Lionfish or something else like Dado or something like that, Drata, I think it's called, will be very difficult for you. So that's like a number one thing you should get if you're about to do an audit. The reason for it is because the auditor can get viewer access. He can get the access to look at all of your controls, when and how you met them, who's responsible for them, any open items, when they're going to be completed. It'll produce a POEM for you, a plan of action. It'll do all of this for you, and you won't have to sit there and basically build. Yeah, you kind of have to build the core infrastructure for it yourself if you're going to be using spreadsheets and SharePoint sites and OneDrive sites or Dropbox or all that to store all your policies, procedures, to have levels of authentication associated with all your folders. There's a lot that goes into having it properly set up. It's just literally hundreds of hours. What you want to do with your IT provider or your IT person or somebody who is has an action capability is you go over each of your controls. I've done this. It's a long time consuming process. You basically just go over each of your controls with your IT person and you briefly discuss them. This takes literally 2 or 3 days. You could do it within one day if you go really fast, but in some scenarios, you have to take a pause while you talk about how you have to fulfill that particular control, if you need to take action on it. And then if you do, you need to put that in your POEM and you need to put due dates on it, responsible parties, so on and so forth. So if I were you, I mean, you don't have to, but if I were you, the smart move is to go over each of your audit, even though you're going to go over it almost all of them again with your auditor, if that's what they want to do. Some auditors I've sat with have gone over every single control and looked at every single piece of artifact and asked questions about them. I mean, they want to earn their $17,000 or $18,000 in some scenarios for doing the audit. So it's, they got to have something to show for it. If they just give you a bill at the end and say, yeah, we looked at your controls, they look great, then that's probably not going to make you super happy. So basically, these accountants and these CMMC guys are going to go through every single one of your controls, and if they do, they're going to want to talk to you about each and every one of them. Okay, so you're going to stumble upon controls inside of your infrastructure that you aren't going to be able to meet. So we've spoken about this before as well. You're going to want to pretend that you can meet them, or you're going to want to come up with scenarios for how you would meet them. A great example is there's a control in NIST 800 that asks how you would move data from point A to point B. So if you had CUI in one location and you need to transport it to another location, how would you do that? Maybe you don't have two locations and maybe you aren't moving CUI between the both of them. So you're like, not applicable, I'll skip this control. In a lot of scenarios with these controls, they score you on how many controls you meet. So if you just skip that control, you lose the point for it. And in a lot of these companies like Lockheed and Boeing, Department of Defense, Navy, military, they take your score seriously. So sometimes your score, if it's 100 out of 110, you may not be what's called a gold or a platinum or a tier one vendor for them. So they won't give you a contract that might be more sensitive, that might have more defense, related information in it. They may say, well, he doesn't meet all the controls, so we're only going to give him a lower tier of contracts that you can bid for. And in this scenario, what you want to do is you want to fulfill the control by just saying what you would do. in the event that you had to move the data between point A and point B. You would say, look, we would use a secure, a lockbox. We would transport the data on a route that we pre-established. It would be only sent by a particular person that was authorized, that was in a group called data transporters. And you might even create a group within your infrastructure called data transporters, even though you're never going to use it. You have now proof that you can meet the control, evidence of this group that you built that has, that has users in it that are capable of moving data. And so you meet the control. It's no different than saying, even if you are meeting a control like encryption, for instance, if you're encrypting your hard drives, then you're going to say, yeah, we use BitLocker. We're going to use BitLocker to control it. Now, maybe you haven't done BitLocker across all of them, across all of your hard drives, and you're working on it, but you're still like, you've got the policy, you've got the procedure, and you can meet the control, therefore you can get the points for it. Because like I said, a lot of these places will give you points based on, or they'll have a critical redlined area where if you're not doing MFA, they'll put you definitely down into a secondary tier, where you won't be able to get the contract, where you won't be able to work in a certain capacity for the prime, all these different things. So when you're filling out your controls, make sure that you fill them all out. And if you're not doing it, pretend, not, I wouldn't say pretend, just create a policy that says, if I had to do this, in the event that I had to do this, this is how I would do it. Old evidence, a lot of the times, if you start this process out in 2019 and it's 2024 now, and you have evidence where you've you've sent in at 2019 of like your groups, you're going to want to pretty much update that to make it be more current. I've seen auditors kick back evidence that has been over 3, 4, 5 years old. So make sure your evidence is updated, even if it's the same evidence. You could just screenshot it and put a timestamp and date on the bottom of it that showed that you updated it that year, or recently. I've seen auditors pretty much disqualify or kick back evidence that's been super old. So make sure you do that. What are artifacts and evidence? So artifacts and evidence are screenshots of firewall configurations, screenshots of group membership inside of your IAM full area in Azure, in Amazon Web Services, your Azure Active Directory in Azure, your computer management settings, your Active Directory group policies. These are the screenshots that are going to be evidentiary. Policies and procedures are another artifact. And it's important to recognize that some of these controls require that you have 2 artifacts. In that situation, what I do is I always lead with a policy and a procedure. So have a policy and a procedure. It's basically describing how you're going to meet the control, what you do to meet the control. And we actually have a class on how to fill out. You can check it out from earlier times, how to fill out a policy and procedure properly. We have templates that you can download and get from Jeremy. But definitely start with a policy and a procedure. You don't necessarily have to create, like I said, in that section, you don't have to create a policy and procedure for every single one of your controls, which would mean you have 110 policies and procedures. What you can do is create something called a security policy. And within that security policy, you mention, we do background checks when we hire employees. And that would be, in that section of the policy. So therefore, you don't have to maintain a single document that has, all of the different components that you need to have for a policy and procedure for every single one of your documents. So what I would do is I would definitely create a policy and procedure security policy that describes some of the sub-content that is very light. Documents. So if you have a sign-in sheet, for instance, you're going to want to take a picture of that for your physical access policy. Again, even if you don't have a location, you would say, here is a picture of a sign-in sheet that I would use in the event that I had an office or multiple offices. You might want to take a picture of, there's a requirement that you shred hard drives and equipment, that you munch them with a muncher. So you would take a screenshot of your muncher that shredded hard drives, or scrambled all the data on a hard drive before you throw it out. You might want to take a screenshot of your camera, a picture of your camera, not screenshot, sorry. If you take a picture of your camera in your lobby, or the types of cameras that you would deploy if you had a lobby. Some of these requirements say that you must have cameras pointed at different areas that are sensitive or accessed by certain people. So you would take a picture of a camera, or you would download a picture of a camera from ones that you would purchase and show those. They'd say these are the cameras we would deploy in our facility. You can also take basic videos. Um, uh, like for instance, if you had a training program, you would want to show possibly the video of that training program. So if you had, different things that might require videos, those are definitely absolutely acceptable. Photos and videos would fall into this category. So yeah, if you have a training program, it's perfect for the video. If you have a methodology you want to explain through video, there's definitely a way to stick video in there and be able to show that. Okay, what happens during the audit? The auditor will come in and he's going to give you they're going to break it down. They're going to have meetings with you on a regular basis. They're going to want to meet with you either virtually or in person. And then they're going to either give you a subset again of different controls that they want to see. They might start out with a basic set of controls, but any good auditor is going to go through every single one of your controls. But I've seen it where they don't. I've seen it be a lighter audit. Sometimes it's a yearly audit. They don't necessarily will, after the first year, maybe they'll come in and look at every single one of your controls. The second year, and yes, they perform these audits virtually every year. The second year, they may come in with a lighter, higher level set of requests or actions that are relatable to the things that you need to update on a regular basis. So, for instance, you need to review your policies and procedures every year. So they're going to come and ask you, can we see the last review you did of your policies and procedures? And so you're going to need to produce a document that shows, here's when we reviewed our policies and procedures. It's good to do these things at the beginning of the year, the repetitive things that you do. It is good to do them at the beginning of the year so that when the auditor comes in March, February, September, October, sometimes you've already done all of your recurring repetitive tasks. For instance, in NIST 800-171, there are 14 or 13 repetitive tasks that you need to perform every year. So one of them is to check your policies and procedures, for instance. You need to make sure that you perform all 14 of those steps every year. You should do it at the beginning of the year so that it's available to you as evidence that you have taken those steps. The next thing you need to do is have a methodology of sharing the data with the auditor. If you have a product like a compliance product like Lionfish, it's going to be easy. You're just going to give that person either viewer rights to your platform. They can log in with their login account. It can be from their company or organization. So they'll have the ability. It's a SaaS platform. They'll log in. They'll be able to go through every single one of your controls one at a time. You can have multiple. I've seen it where you've had multiple auditors, more than one person. They split the job up maybe into 2 or 3 people, or they might also have somebody who's training with them that they want to have show access to these areas. The trainee person will look at your controls as well as the primary person, and they'll go through all of your controls, looking at the evidence, and then they may spot check you. They may say, hey, look at this evidence. I see you have, group policy. Can you actually show this to me? I've seen that as well, where they'll actually want physical one-on-one time with you, where they'll go, okay, there's a group policy in your Active Directory. Can you share your screen with me? Can you show it to me in real time? Versus them believing that it is just something that you've done and taken a screenshot of. That might not be true. I've seen, in the worst case scenario, I've seen an auditor require physical a confirmation and visual confirmation of every single control. That was the longest audit I've ever done. It lasted multiple weeks because we were just sitting there day after day, meeting after meeting for hours and hours and hours, showing this person every single one of the policies and controls that we met, and that we had to physically show it to them. So logging into the firewall, showing them the configuration, logging into the Wi-Fi, showing them the encryption level. Even though we had screenshots of it, they asked us to go through and show them physically all of those different things. So you should be prepared for the worst of worst case scenarios, which would be to actually not only have the evidence and the artifacts that you're put in your site, but then also be able to show them what was going on. And in that scenario, we had an IT person that sat there and showed them every single thing that needed to be done. So if the auditor asks you to do something, they may say, look, this is just not quite good enough. This is not meeting our set of requirements, which they're going to have internally. There's no way to know what their requirements are unless they tell them to you. Some places do have requirements. Some places ask for you to have a certain level of encryption, a certain encryption protocol, like for your Wi-Fi. They may ask that you have a certain type of naming convention for your users, or different things like that. They'll give you a set of requirements that they've created on their own. And I'll tell you, these requirements are actually coming from the government, or Lockheed, or Department of Defense, or like a weapons manufacturer may say, look, we require that you have this type of this or that type of that. And so you're going to want to have an ability to assign tasks to your team. So to do that, you're going to need to have some sort of a methodology. Like if you had project, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. If you had Microsoft Project or something like that, you would then have the ability to assign tasks with deadlines and requirements, and who's assigned to the task, and if there's a sub task, and what that, if there's a requiring top level task that needs to be performed, you're going to need to want to show that to them in some sort of fashion. The worst is Microsoft Project or something similar to Project. The best would be to use, again, like a compliance engine, which has built-in tasks, which we'll look at after this presentation a little bit. Show them your POAM. So don't think your POAM is empty. It never should be empty. Your POAM should always be filled with goodies. Now, one of the things that your POAM will have in it is that you're going to have you're going to perform the audits of your tasks. So that'll be in the POAM. The POAM will also include, that you reviewed, maybe that you did some sort of server upgrade, that you changed out your equipment, that you upgraded your, even if you can even put patching in your POAM. You say, look, we're patching all our equipment on Thursday, or the third Thursday of every month, and you put that in your POAM and who's responsible for it and if it got done. If you make any major changes to your infrastructure, if you're having an audit, the audit's going to be in your POAM for sure. So because these are things you need to show. Every single auditor I've ever seen has asked for some sort of POAM. POAM is not exclusive to CMMC and NIST. You can have like a POAM type of a sheet for HIPAA and PCI, but they're going to want to know, what is it that you haven't met 100% in your requirement set. If you don't have all of your requirements met, but you plan to have them met, then definitely you're going to want to put it in your POAM. If you get a new facility, if you get a secondary facility, that's going to spawn a ton of stuff in your POAM. So whenever you get another facility, whenever you get a primary facility, your POAM is going to be filled with goodies. So don't feel like your POAM is going to be empty. And if it is empty, then that's going to raise a red flag for everyone, including you. Show them your SSP. So your SSP, we went over in our first course how to fill that out. You can get a copy of the SSP from Jeremy again, and you can look at the video that we created. He can share it with you. There's a channel that Jeremy can stick in the chat for you to look at to see our old classes, but we definitely went over how to fill out the SSP and what it was that was required there. Okay, so we're gonna flip over to the oops. Oh, we're gonna flip over to the platform that we use, that we're basically promoting here. So in the platform, you're gonna have all of your different controls, and in the control sets, you're gonna have a lot of different capabilities. So this is 800, 171, the control, and it's going to have all of these different sub controls. If you need to meet them, the auditor may require that you meet these sub controls. This is the primary control. These are sub controls, and these are where some of the requirements of your vendor may come into effect. So in some scenarios, the auditor may just say, okay, meet 3.1.1, but they also may say you also need to meet 3.1.1c. So that may be a requirement from the auditor. A lot of the times I'm hearing that the CMMC auditors are requiring that you meet all of the controls. So it's just wording, additional wording inside of your basic policy and procedure or your evidentiary compilation. These controls will just enhance them. To one of these controls. So once you're in the control, once you're in the compliance platform, again, you're going to want to be able to show an auditor this area. And what's good about this is that you get access to your POAM here. You can get access to your policy here. You can get the sub-item questions right here. You can also, if you're not sure how to meet it, you can click on the training tab and get training. You can get documentation that's been pre-made for this, and then task uploads and those, which we're going to go to next. But the best part about this is it shows everyone if the particular task has been implemented or not. It could be in progress. And some of these other things, I don't suggest you use not applicable, use another approach. These are going to cause you a lot of trouble during your audit. I mean, if you're okay with not being 100%, if your vendor says, look, you have to just have 100 out of 110 score, and you're like, well, okay, I don't meet this particular requirement, and you want to put no or not applicable for it because you're okay with losing the score points, then I would do that. But I would never do this. I would never do these. I would just create the controls, that the policy and the procedure for it that just said, here's what I would do in the event that I had to meet this control. Your date of implementation is important. You can pick responsible parties here. This is interesting because you can pick yourself as a responsible party to fill it out, or you can also pick one of your your managed services security provider or your IT guy or the HR person. You can pick a responsible party. You choose them. They get emails from the system that says, hey, you have a task that you need to perform. It's been assigned to you. So they get alerted by the system. Then they can log in and they can do their work, which is like external parties. You can manage your external parties by saying, okay, my managed service security provider is so-and-so. I'm going to add them in here as, as a resource that I can use to assign tasks to. All right, you can make remarks in here. You can tell people all about it. Then let's get this. This is the meat and potatoes of it all. This is where you're going to spend all your time. Who has been assigned the task? It'll be right here. The person, the responsible party, admins, category, status type, priority, due date, all that's here. And the artifact itself. You add the artifact right here. It'll sit here. You'll be able to, the auditor will be able to look at it. They can click on it. They can look at it. You can add more. You can remove them. And then you can make notes about certain things like, this change was made because of X or Y, or we plan on doing this in the future, whatever. You can put notes in there. And then there's a section for your auditor. They can put in in notes for you to review, so that they could just go along and give you an up-to-date audit review and notes, so that they could tell you, hey, I want to see more information about this particular control, or this your policy and your procedure doesn't meet our requirement set. The auditor themselves can put in, you know, their review, and they can give you notifications. They can communicate with you through this system, and you keep it all in one place. You can look at it all from one pane of glass, and that means that you have the ability to basically sit here and work, because there's nothing worse, honestly, than having to move around to find things, in my opinion. When you have to move from one folder to another folder to a different documentation platform. I've had it where I've had 5 windows open for one, for when we're not using a compliance tool. When you have 5 windows open and you're opening and you're closing and you're working on all these different areas, it's time consuming, and it's confusing, and it's somewhat frustrating. If you get frustrated easily, then absolutely you're going to have trouble with something that doesn't have a common area. And within this platform, there are training resources, there are policies and procedure templates, there are all different, videos, um, deep dive explanations into what it is that, what it is that you need to do to meet this control. Some very good examples of different things that you need to take in consideration when you're making your control, when you're creating your policy, your procedure. If you can look here, you'll see that there are tons and tons of really good words. Okay, so why is that important? Well, guess what? When you're trying to fill out a policy and a procedure, you don't even, when it was me in the beginning, I didn't really know what to say or what to do, or what was expected of me, or what is it that they're looking for, what is it that they're after. And Lionfish has definitely said, look, here is if you can see all this, these are like you go online and you like search for words, you'll look for 3.1.1, and there'll be so many different websites. They'll have so much different information, and you're like, is this information from the vendor or from the SaaS platform company? Is this relevant to what I need? You read it, and it doesn't have all the things in it that you think you need. Here it is. This is it. This is the prime source of goodies. This is the best place because it's got, look at all the words. Honestly, I search for words when I need to make a policy or a procedure. I need something to say. And this is where Lionfish is really helpful. They give you all the words to say within your policy. This is the policy. You just basically change this to be what you need to say, remove the parts of it that you think are wrong, or different, and elaborate on them. But this is really the most helpful part, because imagine you have 110 controls and you need to go on the internet and search on each control of what the control is, how the wording and the verbiage of it is. It took weeks to find all this data, and they've compiled it all in one area for you. Here is your policy. Here's a template of your policy. You can scrape this out, put it into a document with your change control, your title, your version number, revision number, the sign off people. Scrape all this data out. It's invaluable. Companies will charge literally $100 to $300 per, if you're trying to like download it. They may charge up from anywhere from $18 to $100 to $300 for these words. Believe it or not, they'll charge you for the words. So they've compiled them all in one spot. It is just so good. Once I saw this, I was so relieved that I didn't have to come up with my own policies and procedures. And then I believe that when you create a task within your area, it also will update your poem as well, and or not. I believe it will. so that you can automate the production of your poem. So all your tasks will go in there, the due dates, the person that needs to do them. So you don't have to fill out your poem. The system will automatically create the poem for you. And then if you want to intercommunicate with your group, say you have your MSSP, your managed services security provider, your IT person, your HR person, your executive staff. I've seen these where they've been broken out into a group of 5 people working on this at the same time because of a deadline. And the ability to cross communicate inside of the platform for everyone to see versus sending hundreds of emails all over the company looking for something. You could just ask the questions in here, and when the questions are, how do we fulfill 3.1.1d? I think that we have a list of authorized users established, but I'm not sure. Can someone please confirm that we do? You can ask the question right in here, so that people who have access to this particular task or have been assigned to it can look at this and see what needs to be done. All right, that is how you prepare for an audit. Here. So again, I beat on the fact that a compliance platform is critical, crucial. It's not. Like I said, I've seen audits done. The time that you would lose versus paying to get this done is a no-brainer in my opinion. It's also a no-brainer that if you are audited, I know a company that makes guidance systems, for rockets and for missiles, and they are constantly audited. I have to fill out an audit form for them literally every month. So without this platform backing me up, I'd be lost. So again, you have to, companies like the Department of Defense will not skip a beat. They will audit you. Lockheed Martin has actually an auditing platform, where they have all of the different audits you have associated with you inside of their platform. So you have to log in there and fill out all of the different requirements and be authorized and have 2-factor authentication. And in some situations, I've even had to get a key fob where, that changes the number every so often versus 2-factor. So definitely be ready for an audit, and be ready by having a compliance platform or following all the different requirement tips that I gave you for that particular thing. All right, let's see if we have any questions today. Anybody want to ask questions, raise your hand or put it in the chat, and I can answer your questions. Wait for a little bit here. So either I gave such an awesome class, no one has any questions, I've covered everything, that's amazing. Or, oh, DeWine, you have a question. Go ahead.
How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Great. Quick question. So I know you showed us some of the policy verbiage. Is there sample policy info out there that you can kind of use and maybe use as a template to develop your own for your organization?
So the first class I gave, I did provide a great policy document. So you can just ask Jeremy for that, or I can have him send it to you. Yeah, that's great. That has the that has like the title, the version, the sign off person, and it talks about like the scope, the requirements, the responsible party. It shows you all the different the goodies, the words that you have to put in there. Those are hard. Those, if you have to go find those you have to sniff around for, on the internet or download a policy and procedure document. But I bet you Jeremy will give you whatever you want, because he's super good about it, and he'll give you what, that those documents. So ask him for them, or I'll tell him to get with you and see what he can do for you.
Okay. No, that's great. Yeah, that's what I want to verify that there was. And I've been on all of your classes so far.
Oh,
So
great, great.
yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, perfect. Thanks for the question. Okay. Yeah, so Jeremy will make this show available. We have a show area, so you can get in your car and drive far away and listening to it again, and enjoying it. Um, probably not, but I can only imagine. So basically, yeah, if you need to get this class, if you need to get a demo of this platform, it's awesome. It's just good stuff. And like as you can see on the screen right now, it's showing your score. So if your score is really good, you're going to get better contracts. You're going to get gate. It's going to open up doors for you to get to, you know, different levels of business that you can perform. So definitely get this tool if you're going to have any kind of audit, or oncurring or recurring audit. All right, I don't see any more questions. So have a great weekend, and thanks for coming again to the show. Nobody else is raising their hand. Okay, cool. We gave everybody a couple minutes there. So thanks and have a great weekend. Goodbye.